من يريد الله به خيرا يفقهه في الدين. I'm very honored to be invited to this majlis for the sake of being invited, first of all, by eminent scholars and teachers of the religion, which we will be talking about, teachers of the deen. And the other reason is because it's my second time being in this masjid. So if you are returned and called back again to the same masjid, it really shows there's a warmth of the heart and a degree at least of qabuliyat or acceptability that you are invited back once again.
You're in our hearts.
Very, very generous of you. It's a bit like a guest that you have in your house. If it's an unpleasant guest and it didn't go quite so well, then you'll be reluctant to invite them back again. But if everything went well and you enjoyed the company, you would invite them back, and I'm sure if they enjoyed the food, they would also come back as well. So it works both ways. Qibla Dr. Sharif Sahib and Qibla Dr. Mufti Munir Al-Azhari Sahib gave very generous introductions. I really do appreciate that, and I thank them for that. He mentioned Quran and Sunnah, English was called the Muslim Guardian. And I just remember as a child when my father had the press in Manchester, and we used to go there and look at all these machines and so on. They bought a press basically, and he felt the need to have there was no internet in those days, but to have a Muslim newspaper, a newsletter, journal, magazine, and people would contribute to that. I didn't know what was going on. I used to just see what was happening there and spend a bit of time. But I think it was found in the city centre somewhere. So these memories go back a long time, which is testament to how long Dr. Sharif Sahib has been serving the deen. 42 years. So that's older than I am at the moment. So he served longer than I've been alive in this world, and we should appreciate and acknowledge that. And we should be grateful to have people in our community, figures like this, who are doing basically the thing that I'm going to try to express in my talk today, and to encourage everybody towards doing themselves as well, because it is a two-way thing. As Dr. Saab was saying before when he was reciting the salawat, there has to be reciprocity. This has to be a two-way thing. It's not just one way coming from this side, but it's something from you that's also required here. When I was told the topic, so when I was asked to do a talk, I was asked to do a talk about from Sahih al-Bukhari, because I think Dr. Munir Sahib has been engaged in the rules from this book, holy book of Hadith, and he asked me to do that. When I saw the poster, it was something about the future of youth, the progress of youth, and what the future holds for us. So at first it might not seem that these two things are saying the same thing, or they look like two different topics. I will try to bring those two things together from talking about ilm, knowledge, and also discussing how knowledge relates to our youth and how it will give us a future that we can all look forward to, which is paramount at the moment. One thing I would say is that, first of all, probably about the book Sahih al-Bukhari, which you probably have been talked about, or which has been told to you probably on a number of occasions. In terms of hadith, it is regarded as the highest in terms of its authenticity. But that's not to say that there are not other hadith books which are authentic. Of course there are other hadiths found in other compilations that are not authentic. Of course there are. We judge hadiths on an individual basis wherever they are found. There are, in fact, about 650 collections, written books of hadith. Many. The Quran is one, don't get mixed up, and this was revealed and it was written down completely and memorized, both memorized and written down in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but the hadiths, they took a while to be all compiled and written down into various, books. Like you've got the Jami, you've got the Musannaf, you've got various like Sahaif al-Hadith. In many, and even before Imam Bukhari, there were many. Some have even said that there could be hundreds even before Imam Bukhari in terms of the research. Because he didn't come from nowhere. Okay? Right when he was in the 3rd Islamic century, there were many hadiths that came about before this, which also fed into his compilation or found their way in other compilations of hadiths. But what's special about his book and the book of Imam Muslim is that they paid more attention, they scrutinized the hadiths more before including them. And that's why it's an important book that we regard it so much in high esteem. But as I was saying, there are other hadith books, of course, especially for those that, for example, are looking at Islamic law and they follow the Hanafi school. You might find support for our practices in other books because Imam Bukhari did not include them because he was not a follower of the Hanafi school. That's his choice. And it is a compilation, it's a jami. He's compiled this book. He's got a right to include what he does and what he doesn't. He says himself, I had memorized 100,000 authentic hadiths. And you think that's, in today's day, we can't even imagine that. These people were people of miracles, of karamat. But we know that for his collection, there is only a fraction of those hadiths. Around 4,000 and something, depending when you remove the repetitions and so on. But so that was a choice that he made. And it's important that we do study this book because there's sometimes this allegations on some of our speakers and our masjids, imams, khatibs, and even ulama, that they don't mention hadiths, they don't follow hadiths, which is obviously completely false. And in fact, it's defamatory to say that we don't follow. Our whole deen is based on Quran and Sunnah, and this is why Dr. Munir made this effort to show people that our deen is taken entirely from the books of hadith, because that is our means to get to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And why is it so important, this particular topic that we are addressing today? Because people in today's day and age, especially our youth, have many questions and are concerned about a number of issues. That's not to say that they were in the past, but just to give you an example, we see today what, for example, is happening in Palestine. And people are hurt by it, disturbed by it, don't know what to do, they feel despair. So what do you do when you see injustice on such a scale, such dhulm that we are witnessing, and it's being not only people turning a blind eye to it, but they are facilitating it, they are partners in the criminality of what's going on. They are assisting, aiding, funding it. So our youth ask many questions, young people ask so many questions, elders are asking many questions, ulama are asking questions. That's not to say that we have all, we have a solution or all the answers. But the problem is that people don't know where to get that guidance from. They are struggling in terms of where to get the hidayah, the rushd from. And that's leading people to go on the internet and on social media, on YouTube, for example. And just on Jummah, actually, somebody was asking me a question from the university. And he said, I'm really, and mashallah, he's not like he's ignorant. He reads and he searches. And he asked me a question and said, I'm really struggling with who to follow. I mean, that's his words. Who shall I follow? People say this, right? Where shall I get my knowledge from? And because there is so much frustration among people, he said, when I go online, I see some videos that are very extreme in nature. And I don't want to follow those groups. But when you're so angry and frustrated and you don't know what to do, you end up watching those videos. And as people who go through studying knowledge in the way that I have done and the ulama here, then we sometimes might be a little bit neglectful of that sentiment and how easy it is for people to be captured by extremism. Because we're not so affected by ourselves. We have the radars to detect these kind of things, we have receptors, and we have the right kind of shielding and blocking mechanisms. But a lot of young people don't do that. And he said, some of that stuff is very extreme, but they get drawn to it because they're frustrated, they're upset, they believe there is dhulm and injustice happening, and they find quick solutions in some of these preachers out there, or YouTubers, influencers, that take them in one direction. And then the second bit was more interesting to me than the first bit, because I wasn't surprised about the extremist side as much, because we know it's out there. It's always on the news that there are these extremist, radical, so-called people, Muslims or speaking in the name of Islam. He said, on the other hand, we have so much stuff on the internet, which is very, let's say, secular, liberal, in the sense that they don't even criticize or condemn injustice at all. In fact, they talk about being absolutely loyal, unquestionable obedience to the rulers and the system of governance. And there is no criticism whatsoever. There is no speaking out. And then when you hear those people as well, you get confused and you get upset. And you don't know what's going on. So people are watching things between two extremes. They are either completely silent about the injustices, or tell you to be silent and just have patience, and to either ignore the injustices or somehow justify them, or just say obey your rulers and leaders and that's it. And you've got the other side, the other extreme, which is actually calling for extremism or pulling people towards that direction. So then what do we do between this ifrat and tafreet? We need to have balance, because we know our religion is one of moderation and balance, wusta, right? And we know that I don't want to go into this direction about the Prophet. So I'm saying about the khairul amil is the wust among them, or the awsatuha amongst them, right? So how do we get to this median balance, this perfection that we're looking at, which is a kind of equilibrium, a balance, a stability between this ifrat and tafreet? And what I did kind of tell this individual, but again, there's not many opportunities for this, is to learn your religion. You are going to the wrong places. You are going online to social media, you're watching social media fights, people trying to get views and clicks, as we call it, like clickbait nowadays. People falling for this. And they are watching, binge watching even, things on social media, and even though the content is purportedly Islamic, they are becoming misguided or just confused, not finding the answers. The problem is, even when you look at something like Palestine, or all of the other challenges that we see around us, or people just not obeying their religion, going astray, being enticed by all the fitna of the dunya, all the tazina, zuyyina lin-nasi hubbu shahwat. So they are following their desires. Why is that? Because they do not have guidance, and what does guidance come through? Through knowledge, through ilm. In fact, the word ilm, we know it means knowledge. In English, it's from the root of knowing. When you know something, this actually means to be certain about something. The ulama of Aqidah, when they say that something is definitive and something is certain, they say this thing is ilm. Yes, this thing is known by ilm. Ilm is certitude, having certainty. And the rest of it is dhann, conjecture, probabilistic, thinking that something might be right, but it's not certainty. And our iman and our Islam is first and foremost based on what? Certainty. That's why there are people that are so confused and don't know what to listen to, feel misguided, don't know where to go because they lack certainty. What's the opposite of certainty? Confusion. Confusion. And having thoughts which are fuzzy. And we need to give people that certainty, because with certainty you will get stability. And with that stability you will become anchored in your deen to the point that whatever the ahwal of dunya are, whatever is happening, the states of the world are, whichever tribulations people are facing, whichever way the winds are turning and blowing, you will remain anchored in the position that you are and will not be affected. That doesn't mean you keep your eyes open, of course you do, but you don't lose your spot. You don't drift away. And this is the big problem that we are facing. And I will mention some ahadith from Sahih al-Bukhari and other ones which relate to it, which will be about seeking knowledge, but I will tie this in to action and what we do with this knowledge. So in one hadith, the Prophet ﷺ says, and this is in Sahih al-Bukhari, it's in Sahih Muslim as well, by the way, and it's the one that I recited in the khutbah, Man yuridullah bihi khayran yufaqihu fid deen. If Allah intends goodness for someone, does irada of goodness for somebody, goodness, khayr, then what does he do? He gives them an understanding in the religion. Now this word fiqh or tafaqquh is mentioned in the Quran as understanding. We understand it as Islamic law. It came to be known as the branch of Islamic sciences that deals with Islamic law, because that is about comprehension. I will come on to that, why we refer to this area as the fiqh. But it doesn't mean that linguistically, Quranic use and Hadith usage, it means to have deep understanding, deep comprehension, not just an understanding or even a superficial understanding, which is even worse. It means it refers to having a deeper comprehension. It's beyond just normal faham, it's tafaqquh. Sorry, it's gone a bit. Yeah, it's a deeper understanding. And that's why the faqih, we know in Islamic law we call somebody a faqih, but a real faqih is one that has a deep understanding of the religion. You just go to them and you can feel the guidance is just emanating from them. Because they are fully vested in the religion, deep in their thoughts about the deen. That's what the tafaqquh of the deen is. Now you might ask, what is the khair then? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give them khair, will give them goodness. What is khair, the opposite of? Shar. So what it's telling you is, if you want khair, if you want the goodness of this dunya, of this life, you want the goodness of the here and now and the goodness for the future, then you have to pursue the path of the understanding of the religion. The understanding of the religion is what you must pursue. In another hadith, and this is in Al-Mu'jam Al-Kabir, it's got similar wording, but it's got the Prophet ﷺ saying, Ya ayyuhan nas, innamal ilmu bit-ta'allum. How do you receive knowledge? And this is why I want to pay homage to my two elders here. How do we get this ilm? Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we know, mentions about the virtues of knowledge. The Prophet ﷺ said, if Allah was goodness for a person, He will endow them with, and He will give them knowledge, understanding. Not just ilm, but knowledge. Okay, how? So the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّمَا الْعِلْمُ بِالتَّعَلُّمِ. That knowledge only comes, innama is for hasan. The only way you can do this, innama, for hasan, the only way is through ta'allum, is through learning. Arabic is a beautiful language because you have Greek words like ilm, alima, and all of these other words what are about knowledge will come from that same root and mean different things. So ta'allum, to learn, ilm is knowledge. So it only comes by learning. وَالْفِقْهُ بِالتَّفَقُّهِ. And understanding only comes by seeking that understanding. So how does Allah give it? You could say the hadith, the first one, and say, how does Allah give it to you? How do you get it? You actually pursue it. You seek it out. And then the hadith, same one goes on, مَنْ يُرِدِ اللَّهَ بِهِ خَيْرًا يُفَقِّهُ فِي الدِّينِ وَإِنَّمَا يَخْشَى اللَّهَ مِنْ عِبَادِهِ الْعُلَمَاءِ. Beautiful hadith which ends with a verse of the Quran. Verily only those with knowledge are the ones who truly fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So then it's your path to taqwa, to khashiyatullah. If you want real khashiyah and you want taqwa, then what is the journey? The journey is not, and it's only the ulama, those that know, that can truly fear Allah. Why? And remember, it's innama again here, right? Hasan. The only ones are the ulama. It's only the ulama that fear Allah truly from His servants. And what does the Quran say? Very clearly, because it says, قل to the Prophet say, هل يستوي الذين يعلمون والذين لا يعلمون? There is a rhetorical question here in the Quran. Are those, hal is used in Arabic for istifham, for yes and no, for na'am or la, or these type of patterns like bala, of yes and no answers. Are those that know, have knowledge equal to those that don't know? Of course they are not. The ones that know are superior to the ones that know, because it is only through knowing that you can actually act properly. Only through knowing can you act in a way that is proper. Because which comes first? I'll ask you the question, ilm or amal? Ilm. And it is very interesting actually, this relationship between the two words, which are what? Ilm and amal. Because what you've done in Arabic, this is the science which we call sarf. Sarf is the science of etymology, which means you look at the root of words, and morphology, which is how words change into other things, tasrif into other things. But it's also about finding the root of the word, the jidr or the madda of the word. So what you've done is, you've got ayn, lam, mim. You switch the same root, 3 letters, ayn, lam, mim. We're going to stick with ayn, lam, mim, but we are going to swap. Simply, it's a triliteral root, which you call a triliteral root in Arabic, thulathi. It's a thulathi, 3-letter word. We're just going to switch the lam and the mim. Right? Lam, mim. And in the alphabet, it's also interesting, they're right next door to the lam and mim. Next door neighbors in the characters of the alphabet, lam and mim. Right? All you've done is switched around the lam and the mim, and you've got from alima, now you've got amal. You've got amal. So they are very closely connected, and the scholars of the Arabic language, they study this. This is a branch of the sarf where they say, right, if you've got the same root letters but the order has been changed, what is their relationship? And this is a proper tahqiq you have to do. For the scholars or specialists, they'll say, right, what is the relationship? But there's many examples I can give, but we'll get diverted, of when you change the same root letters but you switch them. So there is a relationship, and you cannot escape the subtle etymology variation here. So ilm comes first, then comes amal. I mean, I don't want to get into logic, but you have first the tasawwur of a thing. Tasawwur and tasdeeq, which is conceptualization. First you try to conceptualize, do tasawwur of a particular thing before you come on to the issue of amal. Before the issue of amal. And that's what the definition of ilm is. Usul surat al-shay fil aql. This is at the level of concept. Ilm as a requisite to doing something. But you cannot have one without the other. Although we start with them, we learn it, and then we can do it. It's like salah, we learn how to do salah or wudu, and then we do the salah. Imam Ghazali says a very beautiful thing here about the relationship between knowledge and action. In Ayyuhal Walad, he says, Al-ilmu bila amalin junun, wal-amalu bighayri ilmi la yakun. Knowledge without action is insanity, and action without knowledge is vanity. What does he say? That's a poetic translation. Let's make it more sense. Al-ilm, to have knowledge, but not doing anything with it, this is junoon, this is insanity, crazy. Pagalpan, as we say in Urdu. You've got the knowledge, but you're not doing anything with it. But then to have action, bighayri ilm, to have action without the knowledge before it, la yakun. Now what's la yakun meaning? It's nothing. It doesn't exist. Kana yakun in Arabic means to be. It is not even there. It doesn't exist. It's got no existence. Because you've got an action and it's not based on any knowledge at all. It's just wastefulness. because there is no ilm behind it. That's why ilm precedes the amal. Otherwise, the amal cannot even exist as what we would define as proper amal if there is no ilm behind it. So it's like knowledge without action is madness, and action without knowledge cannot be. It's logically not possible to make taqdeem or have presence of an action without knowledge. This taqdeem does not even work. This is what Imam Al-Ghazali is saying here. And I want to move on just to something else before we look at some of the hadiths, right? This idea of knowledge and practice, how we have to carry both tools with us and pursue both of these at the same time. If you go back to Greek philosophy even, Greek philosophy, like Aristotle, and these were people of great minds and great philosophers, and Muslim scholars drew a great deal on them because a lot of this, what they said was universal wisdom. And you know, the hikmah is what? Dalatul lil-mu'min. Wherever the wisdom is, the wisdom is the lost property of the believer. Wherever you find it, take it. Because wisdom in the end, the true source, as we were saying in the beautiful speech before us from Shaykh Abdul Qadir al-Jilani, which was very enlightening, from Futuh al-Ghaib, is the source of all wisdom and knowledge is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, wherever it's got to, through the Anbiya, and the people who received it and took it on. So it doesn't matter what region, what religion, who they were. He distributed the sciences into two classifications. Into two. Is English okay? English is fine.
People and our elders are all mashallah.
If the young people don't understand what I'm saying, please, because you've got a varied audience here, it might be a bit hard, right?
English is fine.
So when you go back to the very early wisdom of people, this even predates, I'm saying, even the advent of Islam. So people like Aristotle, they distributed the sciences into two: the theoretical and the practical. The theoretical and the practical. In Arabic, they call them nadariya, ulum nadariya, and ulum amaliya. The two sciences. There are others as well, distributions, but these are two of the main ones. And Muslim scholars, just telling you a little bit of history here, and don't want to bore people with too much historical development of these things and how they come about. But ulama of Islam, I mentioned one of them like Imam Ghazali, rahmatullah alayhi, Hujjatul Islam, and other great scholars like Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, who's got one of the most brilliant tafsirs written in the history of Islam. In fact, in the field of tafsir bil-Ra'i, which we call tafsir bil-Ma'thur, tafsir bil-Ra'i, it stands at the top. And he was a great mutakallim, theologian, and philosopher as well. And many of these scholars, they drew upon, when they looked at the classification of the sciences and these mabadi, these principles, they did draw on people like Aristotle and other Greek philosophers. And it's this kind of Aristotelian classification that they follow. But I want to say one thing which, there's scholars like Miskawayh who did a lot of work in this in terms of akhlaq and amaliyat. And some of that was over-philosophized, so theologians like Imam Ghazali, Imam Razi centered it back into the religion. But there's a beautiful thing that Imam al-Razi says here, and he says, in the verse of the Quran, وَهَذَا كِتَابٌ أَنزَلْنَاهُ مُبَارَكٌ يُصَدِّقُ الَّذِي بَيْنَ يَدَيْهِ وَلِتُنذِرَ أُمَّ الْقُرَى and إِلَى آخِرِ الْآيَةِ. So he says, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that this book that we've revealed is Mubarak, what does it mean by that? So this is Mubarak, so he says this is a book which has many khair in it, and it has da'im, barakah in it, manfi'ah, so on. He mentions many fada'il of the Quran, but then he says, وَأَقُولُ الْعُلُومُ إِمَّا نَظَرِيَّةٌ وَإِمَّا عَمَلِيَّةٌ. So the sciences are two, and this is, he doesn't say where he's taking it from, but we know it's going back to the Greek philosophers as well. And he says, in what sense is it Amaliyah and Nadariya? He says, because in the Nadariya, فَأَشْرَفُهَا وَأَكْمَلُهَا مَعْرِفَةُ ذَاتِ اللَّهِ وَصِفَاتِهِ. It is the most noble, honorable and complete in recognizing, becoming cognizant and identifying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His attributes, وَأَفْعَالِهِ وَأَحْكَامِهِ وَأَسْمَائِهِ, and His actions, His rulings and His names. And he says, وَلَا تَرَى هَذِهِ الْعُلُومَ أَكْمَلَ وَلَا أَشْرَفَ مِمَّا تَجِدُهُ فِي هَذَا الْكِتَابِ. And we don't find any other book, any other source of information which is more complete and more perfect and more noble and beautiful than this book, which is the Quran. If you want to do the ma'rifat, recognizing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His laws, it's the Quran. And then he says, what about the practical sciences? And that's why I like a lot of Dr. Musharraf Sahib's teachings and his preachings, which always are making that connection between the Nadariya, the ilm, and the amal. So the Nadariya you can think of as the ilmiya side, right? And he says, what do we mean by amaliya? He said, فَالْمَطْلُوبُ إِمَّا عَمَلُ الْجَوَارِ وَإِمَّا عَمَلُ الْقُلُوبِ وَهُوَ الْمُسَمَّى بِطَهَارَةِ الْأَخْلَاقِ وَتَزْكِيَةِ النَّفْسِ. So what is the amal? What do we mean by the amaliyah? Now you can see very Islamic. You might take the classification from these great Greek philosophers, but he's very, very much anchoring it into our religion, deen and spirituality. These are the actions with the jawarih, like we do our salah, saum and other things, and also the actions of the heart. And that is to purify our traits, our character, purifying our character, but tazkiyat an-nafs, and purifying the soul. وَلَا تَجْدُ هَذَيْنِ الْعِلْمَيْنِ مِثْلَ مَا تَجْدُ فِي هَذَا الْكِتَابِ. And these two sciences are not found anywhere except the way that they are found in the Quran. So, and then he says, if you follow this book in this sense and identify that the Quran is comprised of these two things, then the باحث ثم قد جرت سورة الله تعالى بأن الباحث عنه والتمسك به, then the person who is in search, the seeker, and the one who holds on to this, يحصل له, what will he obtain? عز الدنيا وسعادة الآخرة. He will gain the izzah, the honor of this world and the happiness of the hereafter. By following the framework of the most complete and perfect knowledge that is in the Quran and the action which is called for by that knowledge. He has another one which is also very similar, and he says, I'll try to do this one shorter. So he says the same thing about ilmiya, nazariya. This is about your aqidah, about recognizing Allah, His prophets, His angels, His books, and the hereafter. Aqidah. And he says this Quran contains the best of that, this book that we have. And he says, what about the amaliyah? That is, فَهِيَ إِمَّا أَن تَكُونَ. This is either from tahdib al-a'mal, al-zahira, from our outwardly actions, which is what? وَهُوَ الْفِقْهُ. Going back to fiqh. I'm not going to disconnect from where I started, by the way, inshallah, we'll keep it centered as well. So what is that? What is tahdib al-a'mal? الظاهرة وهو الفقه أو عن تهذيب الأحوال الباطنة. And what is this? وهي علم التصفية ورياضة النفس. I know the both doctors here will be enjoying this because this is really what it all means for us. And then he says ولا تجد كتابا في العالم يساوي هذا الكتاب في هذه المطالب. And there is no book on this, in this whole universe, on this whole world, which can equal this book, which is the Quran, because he's writing this in his tafsir. So you can see it encompasses both the intellectual pursuit, which leads to us having proper, correct belief, and also in terms of actions, which are based on two things. One is the Sharia, following the outwardly actions, and the other is purification of the soul, which will lead to what? Good character, good adab, and good akhlaq. And I'm going to actually, just a little bit, if you could bear with me slightly here, two things I'm going to mention. going to go back again to a kind of universal philosophy. Since the beginning of time, people have wanted to know, what is good action? What does it mean to be good? This question, Su'al, what does it mean to be good? How do we be good? How do we determine what is good? And again, you go back to the ancient philosophers, and they were talking about these questions. And they were talking about it, and they said, the ultimate thing, what we try to do, is to build in within us virtues, or what they call virtue ethics. Certain great qualities and traits. Don't try to think in your mind while I'm speaking, what are those great virtues and characteristics that we all try to want to have in us, right? Including things like being generous, being kind, being courageous, and so forth. The ultimate happiness comes from what? So if you build a virtuous life, so basically what the Greek philosophers, how do we have sa'ada? How do we get happiness? And the Quran uses the word, and the Islamics use the word sa'ada. How we get sa'ada is by being virtuous. And the ultimate virtue, which leads to happiness, even for the Greek philosophers, you may be surprised to learn, was seeking knowledge. Ilm. Ilm is what brings happiness. Proper ilm is what will lead people to felicity, happiness, bliss. Is that pursuit, and how do we get this then? This has also been addressed. By repeatedly doing those actions. If you repeatedly pursue virtues, good actions, husnul akhlaq, for example, generosity, work on it. We're talking about crushing those evil desires of the ego, or those vices, and then you empty yourself out of the vices and replace them with virtues, but then it means repeatedly practicing those virtues. You have to, Aristotle talks about this, that you do repetition, training, tarbiyah, and tadrib, going over them and over, like riyada. That's what riyada is as well, right? It's like, the word for exercise and sport we use, but this is why they say riyada, mujahada. When you keep doing them, they will become second nature. They become part of you. And when these good traits become part of you, what are you? You are a virtuous person. This is the muttaqi. This is the muhsin and not the mufsid. This is the muslih, the salih, and the muslih when he does it to others. The muhsin when he does it to others, the benevolent. So we have these two juxtapositions of malevolence and benevolence. So where we are getting to is benevolence, and away from malevolence. And it becomes a virtue. And now we have to look at the model for this. Where is the model for this virtue, and where are these traits coming from? And when it becomes part of our character, it's the sunnah of the Prophet. Because the sunnah of the Prophet, we say sunnah, what is it? Qawli, fi'li, taqreer. What the Prophet said, what he did, and what he approved in his science. Of course, this is sunnah, no doubt. That's what we determine, that this is the sunnah. But on the holistic level, the sunnah is the model of the Prophet. It's his model example. The legacy with which he left. And that's when you see, what is the Prophet ﷺ? It's a consistency. It's a running cycle, if you like, of good virtues. إِنَّكَ عَلَىٰ خُلُقٍ عَظِيمٍ. The khuluq al-azim is not just one good trait, it's his whole life is filled with them. So that sunnah is a model. We just said here about sunnatullah fi khalqi. But this sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which is an embodiment, like a whole body of good virtues, that's what it is. And we try to emulate that sunnah. And that's what a sunnah is, it's a habit. The sunnah is a habit, an aada. Do we make it our aada, and then we become virtuous as well? So where does this take place? Where does this happen? And again, this is very important for my youth and the parents here. And I am going to draw on, of course, on our deen. But again, Aristotle says something interesting. He says, or important, he said the best place where to start this is with children. You build habits with children. They say old habits die hard. They don't die easily. Very hard to remove habits which are old and you exercise them for a long time. So in children we have to start this. In children, we need to begin this habit of when you see something wrong, correct it. And obviously there's a way to do this in terms of tarbiyah, and teach them good habits from a younger age. Of all of those great virtues, and that's how we're going to prepare the people for our future, by producing virtuous children. Mutakhalliq, people with good akhlaq. Mutakhalliq, you know, the South say mutakhalliq bi akhlaqillah. So, and those people that are virtuous in terms of how they follow that. So, and what did the Prophet ﷺ say here? خيركم من تعلم القرآن وعلمه. Again, going back to Sahih Bukhari. The best amongst you is the one that teaches the Quran, or let's say the one that learns the Quran, وعلمه, and the one that teaches it. Ta'allum, to learn the Quran. Ta'aleem, to teach. Allama yu'allimu, ta'aleem, to teach the Quran. That means first, khayrukum. Let's not get too technical. Ism tafdeel. There is no better. The best. Man is umum for everybody. There is no one better, and there's only two things what you could be doing. There is only two things that you could be doing. One or the other. There is no third category, as we logically explain. If there's two things like this, there is no third way out. It's either learning the Quran or teaching the Quran. They are the best of things. Anything other than that, you are not in the khayr in terms of doing the best. And that's very important to consider. So, the learning of the religion is what is important, and how I'm going to link this to something now which hopefully will bring things together now. Beautiful tradition here, and this is related to what I've said. This one is not from, we will return to Sahih Bukhari. This one is from Musnad Imam Ahmad, Sahih Hadith. The Prophet of Allah, the Messenger of Allah says, خيركم إسلاما أحاسنكم أخلاقا إذا فقهوا. When I stemmed upon this, it just filled my heart with so much joy, and I thought I'm preparing for something, and how are the hadiths coming together? Sometimes this is from Allah. You are sincere because somebody's invited you with love, like Dr. Saab said, and you have sincerity to where you are going and for the cause and for teaching, and you just find things which are so beautiful, right? خيركم إسلاما, the best of you in Islam are those with the best character. Look how it's all coming together. The best of you in Islam, like who has the best religion? Who has the best deen? You might think, he's ignored all those other topics in religion what are very important. We hear people screaming from the pulpit about, right? And all of the scholars on the internet fighting about, right? Or you might find the masjid people are fighting. What's the best of you? Indeed is the best that have the best akhlaq, the best traits and the best character. And then, absolutely phenomenal hadith this is. There's still a little bit left, which is إِذَا فَقَهُوا, if they have religious understanding. If they have the understanding. Because it's all predicated on, built on the foundation. That's why I said the faqh is going to come back, we're not going to leave this term. If they have the understanding, because only with the understanding that you will get the akhlaq. Who have the best of akhlaq. And then, so let's take it in reverse order. Again, balaghatul hadith is a different topic in its own self. Take it in reverse order, the understanding. Then what does that bring? The uhasinukum akhlaqan. Then you are now the khayrukum Islam. The khayrukum Islam. And this is amazing as well. This is in Jami'u Bayan al-Ilm wa Fadlihi by Imam Ibn Abdul Bar, and he quotes a statement from Imam Malik. And he says, إِنَّ حَقًّا عَلَى مَنْ طَلَبَ الْعِلْمِ أَنْ يَكُونَ لَهُ وَقَارٌ. It is the duty of a student of knowledge to behave with dignity. وَسَكِينَةٌ, tranquility. Now we're getting the modes of teaching and learning. وَخَشِيَةٌ, this statement I mentioned it because sometimes they bring this in commentary of this hadith. And khashiyatun, in reverence, in awe. وَأَنْ يَكُونَ مُتَّبِعًا لِأَثَارِ مَنْ مَضَى قَبْلَهُ, and to follow those that came before him. Now, when we get to the stage, and I was I'm bringing this one in. I wasn't going to mention this one because of the time, but I'm going to mention it because of the Quran recitations, very beautiful ones that we heard before I got up to speak. And with the translation, it's going to link into as well with Dr. Saib's unwavering effort in terms of unwavering effort of translating the Quran and trying to understand it. And this is a beautiful hadith. You know that in Islam we are not allowed to have envy, hasad. Many hadiths about hasad will lead people to Jahannam. Hasad is really jealousy. And takabbur are some of the worst things that we can talk about, to be jealous of people, to want what they want, or snatch it away from them so that they don't have it and we have it instead of them. And to burn and feel a sensation of fire inside because somebody is more worldly, materially more successful than us, hasad. Takabbur, arrogance, we talked about vices, these are some of the two worst. If you observe hadith literature, these are two what we have quite a lot, which is like both hasad and takabbur. But you can have competition in Islam, healthy competition. I asked a class recently when I was teaching at the university, it was an Islamic class that we were giving to the Muslim students, and I said, tell me where competition would be jaiz, what do you think? Because it was a workshop, a bit like Dr. Saab was doing it before, I'm just lecturing unfortunately. And I said, what would competition be jaiz, permissible? And I was expecting an answer from what I've been reading in hadith. I said, sport? Oh right, okay, yeah. Sport can't exist without competition. So I don't want you to think about sport, because sport at a professional level at least. But again, the competition again should be healthy there. But you can have competition in two things, by the way. One is in knowledge, learning, that you see somebody else is attending more classes than you, then attend the same amount of classes or more. If you see that person studying 4 hours and you do 2, go for 4, go for 5. And then healthy competition. And the other one is in ibadah. You might see somebody worshipping, you don't have hasad and both, you think subhanallah, look, mashallah to him, I want to try to pray like he does. So this hadith is similar. La tuhasuna. So there is no, this is a sigat majhul here, there is no envy illa fil ithnain, apart from in two things. Illa fil ithnain, which is what? Or fi ithnain. Rajulun atahu Allahul Qur'ana. A man whom Allah has granted the Qur'an to. The fahm of the Qur'an. And this is dedicated to the work that Dr. Munir Saab is doing in this masjid. فَهُوَ يَتْلُوهُ آنَاءَ اللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. And then he recites it by night and day, in terms of reading it, understanding it, in terms of bayan and so on. So you can actually, these are the two, and the other one is by someone who is given wealth and he spends it in the way, he spends it rightly. So, and the Prophet ﷺ, in the hadith, it says there that if I were given the likes of this, I would act as he has. So two things, somebody who Allah has given wealth to, but he spends it righteously, which is part of amal and ibadah. And somebody who is given the Quran, and they actually implement that by not. They've got the understanding of the Quran, but they also actually read it and recite it. We mentioned the khayrukum man talaba al-Quran wa 'allamahu, and I'm going to come on to another hadith here as well. This is from Sahih Bukhari as well. So we're talking about who are the best of the people now, right? The best of the people are those with knowledge, and those who seek knowledge, and those who impart knowledge. In another hadith, this is Sahih Bukhari again, it's in Muslim Sharif as well. And there is a qasam in the beginning. It says, Wallahi, لأن يهدي الله بك رجلا خير لك من أن يكون لك حمر النعيم. حمر النعيم, yes, حمر of red. By Allah, that Allah guides a person through you. Somebody will get guidance through you is better for you than a herd, a full group of red camels, because they were the most valuable and most expensive camels. The best thing that can be is if a person is guiding you. More than any wealth of this dunya or something precious as this. You can imagine for Arabs how precious this was, right? A red camel. I mean, for the young people today, you might think of it like as a red Ferrari, I guess, right? Or a Lamborghini, and they see what kids are like when they see them on the roads, right? But just imagine not having one, but many of them. A whole garage of them, right? Everyone's smiling now, right? Because they all want one. And I can see why you would want them. You know, it's natural inclination to want them. But what does the Prophet ﷺ say? Better than all of that is if somebody is guided through. That Allah gives hidayah, bika. Just imagine that one person gets guidance through you, and of course that will happen by seeking knowledge. And that's why our duty then is whatever small amount of knowledge we can pass. Again in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet ﷺ said, famous hadith, بَلِّغُوا عَنِّي وَلَوْ آيَةً. That even whatever you can do in terms of spreading knowledge, even if it's one single verse, then send it on, pass it on, because that's how knowledge accumulates. Unfortunately, in our society, people are spreading rumors, and rumors spread so fast. Why is the khair and the deen not spreading? You find the way that a rumor or a namima or some sort of ghiba spreads like fire. Spreads like fire. But knowledge, deen, words from the Prophet there. So spread it one by one. Maybe that person, there's another, we know what the ulama say, you could send it to one person, but that person, the way that that person might understand it, and the way that person might spread it might go to 100 others. And you will get the reward for this.
MashaAllah.
We're going to come short of time now, and I'm going to probably finish with this one, in which it's been described that maybe I will say something on this, and we will probably close it here because I've got quite a number of hadith on this, right? The joy that you get out of seeking knowledge, the joy that you get out of it, it's not an empty joy. We talked about red camels and we talked about Lamborghinis and Ferraris. If you actually step into this arena and begin to do it, your thirst will never be quenched. You know, Dr. Sahab was saying that he still loves to learn, he still loves to learn. It's the thing that I like doing most. Imam Shafi said, if somebody's not seeking knowledge, then just consider that person bekar. He's got no use, if that's not what he's doing. So this hadith is a beautiful hadith, in which the Prophet ﷺ, لَنْ يَشْبَعَ الْمُؤْمِنُ مِنْ خَيْرٍ يَسْمَعُهُ حَتَّى يَكُونَ مُنْتَهَاهُ الْجَنَّةِ. The believer is never satisfied from learning good until the point that he gets into Jannah. We mentioned the cradle to the grave, from the ila al-mahdi min al-lahad. The point you will never be. Why do they do it from beginning to end? Because you are never satisfied. You are never filled. Your thirst is never quenched. Your hunger is never satiated. Yashba. Until you get to Jannah, it will never end. I remember one scholar said, amazing, he was about 80 years old, and he studied for about 16 hours a day, this Shaykh did. About 16 hours a day, he would sleep for about 6 or 7, and that's all he would do, and I sat and I seen it. And he said an amazing statement once when he was studying, and you know, people used to praise his ilm a lot, and he said, at this age, Nakin Sabadich. And he said, you know, I've got to this age and I've studied all these hours, and I've realized something now. Now I've realized something, that what they call knowledge, I'll say it all this nicer. इस उम्र में ये पता लगा इतने रोज घंटे मुतालिया और मेहनत और मुशक्कत और साई करते हो, इस उम्र में ये आकर पहुंचा कि जिसको इल्म कहते हैं वो अभी बहुत दूर है. जिसको इल्म कहते हैं वो अभी दूर है. So at this stage in my life, I've realized one thing: what they call knowledge is still yet afar. The thing you call knowledge, he says, just चीज जिसको मुसम्मा बिल इल्म कहते हैं ना, ये चीज जिसको कहते हैं ये इल्म है, this thing, ये भी मेरी नजर में दूर चीज है, because you couldn't even get sight of it. That's why you're never satisfied, because you know what it's like with the mahbub. जब मतलूब जो है जब वो मिल जाए, फिर तो किसरा जो है ना, फिर वो शायरी के अंदर भी थोड़ी सी नरमी आ जाती है ना, वो गरमाइश जो है वो थोड़ी सी ठंडी पड़ जाती है. But the shauq of the liqa is more intense than the liqa itself. The hijr, the separation. And that's the state we are in, that we are always talib, and that matlub may never occur to us. I'm pretty finished with this last hadith. It's a love. Is it a labor of love, Dr. Sam? Tell them. Why? What keeps you up all night and in the morning after Fajr writes and yes? May Allah give us this tawfiq, and I'll tell you. Man kharaja fi talab al-ilmi kana fi sabilillahi hatta yarji. Whoever goes out seeking for knowledge, he will remain in the sabil of Allah, in the path of Allah, until the point when he returns. And that could be from one class with Dr. Munir Sahib, or it could be till the end of when you stop learning, whenever that comes. And that's why the Prophet said, Man dakhala, we'll finish with this one, Masjidina, hada. I can't even, now my emotions are too strong. Whoever enters our mosque, which is our mosque, when the Prophet is saying it, kaun si masjid? Masjid-e-Nabi. Our mosque. In order to teach goodness. So in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, he's the al-muallim, right? Most boys to mualliman, but there are other people teaching as well. So whoever comes not to learn only, to teach. Right? لِيَتَعَلَّمَ خَيْرًا. Oh, لِيُعَلِّمَهُ, or to learn. Remember there's only these two categories. كَانَ كَالْمُجَاهِدْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ. He is like the mujahid. You know, nowadays we only associate jihad with violence and physical struggle. He is striving in jihad in the way of Allah. That's what we are on. Finish with this. What we need for our youth and our young people to go forward is first of all knowledge. What? Structured learning. Proper learning. Imam al-Shafi said there are two sciences. There are two ilms. Ilm of Sharia and ilm of the dunya. They are the only two. Begin with the ta'lim of fiqh. Start studying a text, a classical text, beginning to learn the masail fiqh. The reason is people are getting information, but they're not getting knowledge. On the internet, they are watching all sorts. This is why I bring it back to the brother that asked me the question after Jum'ah. He said, I'm confused because what he's not getting is structured learning. That's the difference when you sit with a sheikh. He said, what should I do? I said, sit with a reliable sheikh and start studying in a structured manner. The problem is you are learning, you are going to speeches here and there. Engage, enroll in a structured curriculum, system of learning, go through a book, go through a text. That will grind you and tell you what the religion is and how it has been for 1400 years. You won't be misguided. Because the religion did not arrive today on YouTube with these people. Start with structured learning, and that will give you structure in your life, and stability, and certainty in your being, certainty in your knowledge. We've run out of time now, I have much more to say. And I thank you for giving me all the time to listen to the message that I had to give, and may Allah give you the tawfiq to actually go out there and benefit from the sheikhs that you have.